there is this myth, or we can say that you should be knowing each and every language or tools of the technologies, and then only you are meant to be a great engineer.
I've seen many great engineers who are not experts at Java at all. What they understand is the fundamentals, and they can implement those fundamentals in any language. This is what computer engineers do. By that time, dot-com boom was all the rage. It was 2002-3. By that time, I moved to Calcutta because my dad got transferred there. And that's when I saw my first floppy disk in my life, 5.5 inch, really big ones.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode. This is Sneha this side from IT and Skills University and Let's Upgrade. And today we have again another special guest with us who is actually going to give us some insights and some facts about, not even facts, but he's going to share more things about his interaction with the students as well. So I'm actually talking about Mr. Sumit Sarkar. He is one of the distinguished software engineer at Vista, and he has a great, we can say, expertise in full stack, then DevOps and cloud technologies, especially in terms of e-commerce. He has held a senior and leadership positions at Simpress and Tradeprint. So instead of me telling more about you, I would want you to share about your journey from being a student at NIT Agartala to actually being a distinguished software engineer at Vista.
Yeah, sure. So I graduated from NIT Agartala in 2014. Studied there from 2010 to 14, and then I got campus placement in Virtusa, which is nowadays, I think it's called Virtusa Polaris, but they may have switched the name back to Virtusa. So I was working there as a consultant, and it's a service-based company, so I was operating as a software engineer for one of the insurance companies. At that point, it was Reuters who was collecting data about insurance companies. So I got the opportunity to work on front end. Back then, React wasn't that popular. It had just started coming out. So we used to work a lot on Backbone.js, jQuery. And after 1 year, I started working on the backend as well. So I learned a bunch about analytics engines, Mondrian, specifically how Spring Boot works. And that's when I think I really started getting into the Java world. Trying to get a better understanding of how do these libraries work, how do they operate, how do these frameworks work. And soon after, I decided that, hey, this company is not working out, I gotta find something else. And I started interviewing in Chennai, outside of Chennai. And lucky for me, I got an interview with Simpress, which is the parent company for Vistaprint. And I got to work with a new team completely, which was building an e-commerce platform. So I joined that team, moved to Mumbai, started building the team along with my boss, and we built a bunch of applications, particularly around products, pricing, different kinds of applications that you can think of, and services within e-commerce. So after doing that for a while and getting promoted a couple of times, I got another opportunity within the same team that, hey, let's start building something around marketing technologies. So I started working on data pipelines as well, learned a bit about data engineering. And all the while, I also worked with cloud technologies like AWS, started learning about infrastructure management, led many initiatives within the team. And I think even to this day, many of the infrastructure that I initially built with AWS, they're still running to this day, which kind of makes me feel proud that what we did really stood its test of time. And after that, I moved over to Tradeprint. An opportunity opened up for a leadership position there for temporary CTO, because then CTO had left. And it was a different kind of opportunity because I got to work with the business directly, working with marketing day in and out, working with sales, working with manufacturing folks, people who are running the manufacturing plant, and trying to understand what are the trade-offs we make in software and in manufacturing to make sure that the business goes forward. So I would say I learned a lot of lessons there. I made a lot of mistakes. I learned how to read a P&L statement, and that was something new. So yeah, after that experience throughout, I would say 2020, from beginning to the tail end of COVID, before we got the vaccination, I moved into e-commerce team again in Simpress and started working on a new product. But at this point, I was leading teams and I was not directly making decisions. It was rather influencing teams so that they can make the decisions and move the product forward. So I learned a lot of that while being in that kind of, a mini leadership position within Tradeprint. And even here, the interactions with stakeholders was very different because across different cultures you have to behave differently. So it was UK, here it was Germany. So yeah, I learned a bunch of lessons there as well. So some of those work that my team did made it to production, some of them didn't. But the ones that made it to production, again, still to this day, they're running a bunch of systems within e-commerce. So yeah, after that I moved another team which was very similar to what I was doing in the current team called Storefront. I moved to Vista Corporate Solutions, which primarily operates from North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. So there it was mostly around how do we re-platform or digitally transform this current architecture and application to the platform that Vistaprint uses. So there it was less about developing day in and out and more about figuring out, hey, what are the things that people have already built within the ecosystem which we can leverage without having to write everything by ourselves. So try to focus mostly on the business goals that you have rather than just the technology part. So it was an interesting role. I really enjoyed it. And once the team was set up, the team matured a lot and we grew leaders within the team. I had to do some self-reflection and self-realization that, hey, maybe people management is awesome. I really like it. But I think it's time to also start discovering what's happening within the IC area. And since the industry is changing a lot, being an IC and looking for future roles which really align with my goals in life, I felt that IC is the right fit for me. So yeah, then I moved over to IC and now I'm working in the area of search, which runs vistaprint.com search. If you go to vistaprint.com search anything, that's powered by the technology built by my teams, the teams that I work with. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of the journey that I've been on.
Got it. Okay. So I mean, you've had so many experiences and learnings throughout your journey. So was it like from start only you had this, no, I want to actually get into software engineering and yeah, this is what I am doing and it is the right thing I'm doing. And yeah, I've already decided from my, before graduation itself that yeah, software engineering is something I will be doing. It was decided?
Honestly, it's a long story. So I would say I was quite privileged that my dad used to sometimes take me to his office and I used to see him working on WordStar, which was like back in 1998, 99. And WordStar used to be this command line only word processor program. And that's what my dad used to use in his office. So he built a bunch of, I would say, macros, which used to be used for, processing salary, processing documentation. So I liked it. And that's when I saw my first floppy disk in my life, 5.5 inch, really big ones. So it kind of got me interested in this kind of system that, hey, what does it do? And by, my dad taking me to his office and showing me this stuff kind of piqued my interest. And that's when I asked him that, who does this stuff? And he didn't know either, to be honest. But after a couple of years, he told me that, hey, you asked me this question and this is what computer engineers do. By that time, .com boom was all the rage. It was 2002-03. By that time, I moved to Calcutta because my dad got transferred. And that's when I started thinking that maybe this is something I want to try. And then we got video games, right? So I started playing them. At one point, I wanted to design video games. So did my brother. And I think by 9th or 10th standard, I realized that, hey, computer is something which is really interesting to me. So I decided to take, in those days, it was informatics practices instead of computer science in CBSE schools.
Okay.
So I got into IP, informatics practices, started doing Visual Basic 6, then Oracle SQL. And I developed a knack for it. And I realized that, whatever happens, I want to get CS. Whichever college it is, I don't care. As long as I get CS, I will go there and try something. And then I went to college, and it was a very different kind of environment from what I expected. It wasn't very practical knowledge that the kind of knowledge that I sought to have. The college education didn't really give me that. But I think that everybody has that natural curiosity, which you have to put wood in that flame, right? So that you get that fire. So I never lost that. I would attribute that to my father, my brother as well, who is also a software engineer. And I think there were few discussions because of which I got interested in other parts of technology. Like, hey, maybe try Python instead of just C and C++. And many of these things, reading things on the internet, It piqued my interest, and that's how I came to be a software engineer. But as I said, I am privileged that I got that opportunity at a very young age. But yeah, at that back then there was no internet. Even if there was, it wasn't really accessible to everybody. But over time that changed, and yeah, I think many of those experiences shaped who I am today.
So, can we say that all the languages are technological languages from AWS to many other things? You have learned it from your experiences and not something that was taught directly from the college. Was it like that?
Yeah. So the only thing that I learned from college was C++, and to this day, I would say I'm still terrible at it. I can do it, I can understand it, but if you ask me to understand a large-scale code base, which is written in C++ already, it's gonna take me a while. I understand the build systems very well because I have used Makefile for other kind of projects as well. But outside of college, I would say I learned a lot of Python during my college days, which still helps me to this day because Python has its resurgence over the past few years, right? In data engineering, in AI ML workloads. So that has helped me a lot. I learned JavaScript and Java while being on the job, primarily Java. So after that, using Java for a while, I realized that, hey, Kotlin, this is a new kid on the block. So let's try that. Although Kotlin became pretty popular for languages as a language used to build mobile applications, but you can use it for backend development as well. And that's how I got into Kotlin. Nowadays, I'm learning Rust because it feels interesting and it's a breath of fresh air. You can do a lot of interesting things with Rust, particularly database programming, building applications which talk with AI models. So that's one area that I'm discovering right now.
So, as you mentioned, you have so many experiences in terms of Java, JavaScript, Kotlin, and all. So, when you are working on any new project or any, any of the project, how do you, be like, yeah, this is the right tool or right language I should be using it for this particular thing? How you make that, decision on it?
So, I would say software engineering in general is a journey of trade-offs. There is no right answer. There is no right tool. There is no right technique. There's just different ways of doing it, right? Of course, there are some fundamental truths and fundamental facts about how to do good software engineering. It could be about patterns. It could be about testing. Those are still true. But languages, frameworks, they come and go. But the fundamentals still remain. So I would say when choosing technologies, generally the trade-offs that you want to make should be aligned with what the trade-offs that your team wants to make. So if you have a team of engineers who are already adept at a certain language or a framework, and it's good enough, just go with it. Because I've seen in my teams that, hey, people already use Java and Spring Boot. I really like Kotlin. I think you can do interesting things with Kotlin, but I wouldn't push it on them because it doesn't make sense. They're already experts at this language and framework. They can move much faster with it. And it's an ecosystem. I mean, Java and any other language provides an ecosystem already, which has many of the things pre-built. So why would you want to reinvent the wheel with Kotlin or some other language? So that's one of the trade-offs that I generally make when I'm working with teams. For personal projects, I just pick what I really like right now. So if it's Python, I'll go with Python. If it's Rust, let's go with Rust. If it's understanding how can I spend the least amount of money to create the highest scalable application, I might even go with SQLite. I might not even go with PostgreSDB. So these are trade-offs that people need to make on a day-to-day life. And I think there's no right answer. It just varies from project to project, team to team.
There is this myth, or we can say that, it is said to believe that you should be knowing each and every language or tools of the technologies, and then only you are meant to be a great engineer. So is it like true?
It is a myth. It is a myth because I've seen many great engineers who are not experts at Java at all. What they understand is the fundamentals, and they can implement those fundamentals in any language. Drop them in with a new language, give them a week or two to understand how the structure of that language works, what are the different terminologies used there, what are the different patterns there, and they'll be able to connect the dots. The benefit of knowing multiple languages and multiple paradigms is that you can pick and choose the kind of paradigm that you want to implement.
Right.
So for example, you can do functional programming with Python, with Java. It won't be as succinct as doing it with Scala or let's say Clojure, but you can still do it. So as long as you have those concepts with you, you can implement them with pretty much most languages. And I think those are the most important tools in any programmer's toolbox. And that's how I've seen great engineers to be. They understand patterns, they understand different tools, how they work, and they can re-implement them and keep re-implementing them in different systems. So whatever works for that system, they'll just go ahead and do that. So I think it is a myth that you have to know the entire language end to end, only then you can be great engineers. But even most books which are talking about a specific language, if you just read the first few chapters, you can be competent enough with those first few chapters and build a working application with that. And that working application may be useful for somebody else. And that's how it is.
Got it. So you said that most of the things that you've learned is through your experiences. These students with whom you had interacted today, they are in their first year itself. So what kind of energy did you feel while interacting with them, and what is your not kind of a feedback, but what is your thought of words for these students?
Yeah, so I would say the entire class was very energetic. It was a really breath of fresh air interacting with students after such a long time. And to be honest, this is very different from how I was in college or how my peers were in college. It was very academic in nature. There was very few practical lessons that happened. And even during those practicals, it was just, regurgitating the same theoretical things that we learned, right? So here it was very different. People talked about different challenges. People talked about different technologies. They are reading up about open source tools as well. In some of the interactions with some of the students, I heard a few questions which were kind of surprising for me, because I generally don't expect first year students to ask that. So the way the industry is changing, they're adapting to it, they're trying to understand it, and there's genuine curiosity in the students. So that's something which I really liked when interacting with them.
Got it. And what kind of vibe did you feel when you entered the campus?
It didn't feel like a typical college to me. The entire campus feels, I would say, very much like any company, any startup. Yeah. And when I entered, it felt like, am I in a WeWork? So yeah, it's very different. I'm glad that Let's Upgrade and ITM is doing this for students, because it certainly gives them that feel of working in a company, or staying in a company environment while being in college. So it prepares them well in advance. And yeah, the kind of soft skills that people have, I definitely did not have that. I had to learn that the hard way, that you have to get better at soft skills to actually become a better engineer, because it's not just about pure technology. You can be very academic about it, but you won't go far in life. So sometimes you have to be likable. Sometimes you have to know how to twist somebody's arm to get things done. So that kind of soft skill is very much required, and I see a lot of that happening with the students here.
So what was your reaction when you saw that each and every student is doing their every single thing on their MacBook itself that is being provided to them?
Yeah, it was very surprising, because when we were talking about networks, the first question I asked is, hey, how many are using Windows? And everybody said no. And how about Linux? No, everybody's using Mac. It was very different, because I came with a preparation that, hey, different people will be using different OS, so different commands will be required. So it was different. I think it helps a lot in college to have that same kind of system, so that instructions can be just curated for one operating system or one kind of programming language or one kind of tool. It certainly helps. In the long run, I think students should discover more things on their own, like they could run Linux or Windows on their VMs, because when they go into the industry, go into an office, not every office may be providing them with a Windows system or a Mac or a Linux, right? So some companies may even have a specific preference that you can only use Windows. But what the IT department may not know is that there are tools which are required, which require you to learn Linux or run Linux or something like that. So for that, they have to be prepared in advance. So that is something that we talked about, and I think students did take that as an advice, and they might try that out.
Got that. So there is a transition from being an engineer to actually being at a leadership position. So how did that, the role of a developer to actually being someone who is actually, mentoring these other developers now. So how did this help into it?
So I would say the biggest difference between an IC and somebody at a leadership level, be it at a engineering, as an engineer or as an engineering manager, is that you have to know how to inspire people, how to influence people, and how to work with people in general, even if you don't have any authority. The biggest mistake that I've seen some people doing is that when let's say reach a manager level, they feel that they have a lot of authority and they try to use that authority to move projects faster, move products faster. Unfortunately, it's a double-edged sword, and you have to know when to use what. I learned my hard lessons there, and I realized soon enough that sometimes, most of the times, you cannot use your authority at all, unless it's absolutely necessary to save a product, save a team, save a project. Otherwise, it's all about influencing people. Because if you can't influence somebody, it's impossible for you to work with other teams, other peer teams. So I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I learned during my journey from engineer to manager, manager to engineer. Another thing that I learned is people are your biggest resources. Technology, teams come and go. But if you work with the right people, whether be it within this company or another company, you'll always have a good relationship with them. So that's something which I learned from my ex-boss, Abhishek, who was here. But yeah, I would say those are the two biggest lessons for me.
So regarding leadership that you said that, you got to learn it from them. Ki, okay, this is not something that I should be doing, that managerial post and supremacy thing. So, did you face any kind of things in your, past position?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say I tried to apply the supremacy thing in my day-to-day, but oftentimes you have to make hard decisions. Hard decisions because either people are not able to make decisions because of external factors, or it could be internal factors. So sometimes you have to just go in and use that authority to get people to make the decisions. Now, whatever decisions you make at that point in time, it might feel right, but in hindsight, 2 years down the line, it might feel wrong. So you have to be ready to accept that, yeah, I made a mistake, mea culpa, let's go back to the drawing board and go fix it. It could be with external teams, internal teams, whatever it is. Now, personally, I have faced some of these challenges in my previous roles in my previous companies. But I would say in the last 7-8 years, again, I think I am very privileged to be within Vistaprint, working within Vistaprint and Simpress. I haven't faced those kind of challenges. But sometimes you do work with difficult people and you have to know how to navigate the waters working with those difficult people, because you have to assume that there's no ill intent. People don't mean anything by their behavior. So it is not ill intent, it's just their way of working.
Yeah.
So how do you mold yourself and your team to fit into their way of working? Because while they might be getting something from you, you might also be getting something from them.
Right.
So it's the ability to mold yourself every once in a while. I think that's one thing that people need to learn over time.
How do you stay updated with all these trends and technologies the way it is, pacing up right now?
So I read a lot of newsletters. I am not very keen on watching videos or audiobooks. Generally, I listen to some podcasts. You have one on changelog.org. Changelog has a very good podcast who talk about, generally they have too many JavaScript podcasts nowadays because JavaScript keeps changing every once in a while, but they have good podcasts about Kotlin, about AI, ML, what's happening within the engineering manager community, or what's happening within big tech. So that's something which I generally listen to once in a week, twice in a week. But besides that, I read a lot of blog posts. I read newsletters. I bookmark those blog posts. There was a time when I used to use Google Feed. Then they deprecated it. Now I use Feedly. I also have my own home lab set up where I have regular scrapers who scrape feeds from different websites so that I can collate them, auto-categorize them, and then read them at my leisure. So those are some things which I've automated in my life, which makes it easier for me to find reading materials. So generally I'm interested in reading things about database technologies, about cloud, what's happening within Java community, Kotlin community, a little bit about AI ML as well. And some of the popular newsletters that I read are from Pragmatic Engineer, which talks a lot about not just tech, but a lot about engineering manager community as well. Although I'm not in that role, I think it pays to learn how these different patterns are working out in the industry.
So, other than your work and all, do you practice any habits or something, or is that reading one of your habits, which is something not related to work, but to get myself, stressed out from all the other things?
Yeah. So I generally read in the mornings because at that point in time, generally I cook the breakfast and lunch for my wife before she goes to office. So in between, whenever I get time, like half an hour break, I go through some articles, listen to the news in the background. So that's a habit of mine, which is a ritual every morning, be it whether I'm at home in Bangalore or I'm traveling, I always do that. after I wake up in the morning. Besides that, after work hours, I generally spend about half an hour again to go through any new blog articles that came out that day, which are of interest to me. Otherwise, over the weekends, between house chores, I do a few side projects of my own. There are some side projects which I'm working on with my friends as well. So those are some things that I practice. But yeah, to truly, I would say, relax, I play games. I play Apex Legends on PS4 with some of my friends who stay in different parts of India and one in Canada. So I play a lot of Apex with them as well.
So, these students have PS4 over here in the campus itself. So, during their free times or during the time when they have completed their project, they actually can come directly to the lounge area and start playing it.
Nice.
So, from their first year itself, instead of ground plays, we've kept PS for these students so they can play on their PS4 and PS5 over here. So, any advice for them regarding these things if it is something related to games and all? Like, other than studies, you should be doing something else that can, keep you busy with things, but also will make you learn other things as well.
Yeah. So I would say besides study, if you have a hobby, pursue that hobby. I really like driving. So me and my wife, we go on road trips. Like I would say when we moved from Calcutta to Bangalore, we drove all the way here. So it's been 4 times I drove up and down, and I really enjoy it. Although I don't like highways much, I think twisty roads are where my heart is set. So I like traveling. We drive a lot. If we travel to another country, we try to drive there as well. So that is something which we really enjoy doing together. So if you have your own hobby, it could be traveling, it could be backpacking, it could be trekking. One of my friends is really into trekking. So yeah, pick up those hobbies, pursue those hobbies, and try to extract as much joy from it as you can, because it's not just about work all the time. Sometimes you have to categorize time in your life and compartmentalize them into different aspects. It could be work life, it could be personal life, and it could be me time, right? So use that me time judiciously. Fortunately, my wife and I, we both have our me times and we do our own things. And then we have our family time as well, where we play with our dog or take him out for a walk. So I think creating those habits from a very early time, it really helps. Unfortunately, I did that very late, but then I soon realized the benefits of compartmentalizing and using the time judiciously.
So you are at a position where you, like at a leadership position, we can say. So how do you make sure that even your team is updated with all the trends? And obviously, when you are maintaining a team, when you are looking after it, so it can be a headache sometimes as well. So how do you make sure that, they are updated as well, but yeah, things are running smoothly as well? As being a leader, I need to make sure, right? So how do you do that?
Yeah. So regular one-on-ones and keeping a finger on the pulse is very important. As I said, nowadays now I'm not doing that much because I'm not in a manager position anymore. But in the past, I used to have regular one-on-ones with the people who report into me. Many times skip levels as well to understand, hey, what is the health of the team? How is the team operating? Is the team feeling happy? Are they stressed out? Is there something that I can do to alleviate that stress? So understanding and keeping a finger on the pulse is very important. Besides that, keeping up with technology, one person cannot do it all. So you have to make sure that you build the next set of leaders within the team. Can you influence other people to do this so that you can do it at scale? Because that's practically how teamwork happens, right? So you don't have one engineer building everything. You scale it out by having people with different skill sets, people with different interests to do it across the team, right? So that's how you build cross-functional team. So I try to do that a lot with my team members that, hey, this is the new thing that came out in the database world. Did you read about it? And after I started influencing them, I saw certain people changing their behavior and they would start sharing and I wouldn't need to pursue that specific topic because they got it, right? And they are talking about it with their teams. In case that doesn't happen, because there's a new topic which team may not be aware of, so I would share that within our shared channels. And if it piques the interest of somebody would pick it up as a proof of concept and run with it. If it leads to a product, great. If it doesn't lead to an outcome, even then it's fine because people learn that, hey, this pattern does not work, right? Yeah, so that's generally how I have done things in the past. Nowadays, when I learn about something new, I just share it with the team channel. If somebody is interested to pick it up as a POC, or if they don't have the time, they would ask me that, hey, why don't you run with it? and then tell us about your learning. So I do that.
Got it. So we know how technology is, changing day by day. You've made some decision regarding some project, and then there is this sudden change in technology. How come you faced it? How did you solve it? And what was the outcome of it? If you know that because of that change, the outcome can actually have a very U-turn kind of thing into it. So how do you, face all these things, and what do you do to resolve it?
Yeah. So this has happened to me a couple of times. The most recent example was in my previous team, where previous team and the team previous to that. So we made a piece of software which would allow you to create websites very easily without having to learn React and any other technologies. Honestly, I can't take credit for that. My team built it. One of the best engineers I've ever worked with, she built it. She scaled it up. She made it work. But then we took this product to another team because the previous team did not make sense for the stakeholders and the customers. So we took it to another team where it made a lot of sense. And the use case was slightly different. And the audience who is going to use this product was also slightly different. Because of that, we soon came to the realization that, hey, this complex system that we have built, it works very well at scale for this kind of audience. But for this audience, we don't require this scale. And it doesn't, the current system doesn't give a good developer experience to our own teams because we take a lot of tools from other parts of the ecosystem and use that. And they are built for the different technology. So retrofitting the newer technology with something which works at scale was becoming more difficult. And it was 2 years worth of effort put into that product, right? And although the core of the product made sense, a part of the system, which was a module for rendering websites, did not make sense anymore. So basically, we are moving from HTML to React, right? So it was a huge change. We went back to the drawing board. I would say the team went back to the drawing board. I was an observer, and we talked about the different trade-offs, and we finally made the decision. In hindsight, I wouldn't say it was a wrong decision then. Why? Because whatever decision you make, you take the factors and variables that you have near you or in your vision into account. There are certain things which are unknowns. There are known unknowns and there are unknown unknowns. We knew the known unknowns very well, but we did not know the unknown unknowns. And when you don't know the unknown unknowns, it's very difficult to make the right decision. You can only look at it in hindsight and say that, yeah, that was a wrong decision. But we know that now today. And that keeps happening over and over again with any software that you build. Whatever decisions you make today, make sense today, may not make sense 2 years from now. And that's why we have teams of engineers constantly looking at the feature set, teams of product managers, UX, constantly looking at the feature sets, the bugs, how our customers are using it, their behavior, trying to gather the metrics of their behavior, and based on that, change the entire product. So yeah, it's happened a couple of times. We learned our lessons there, but we came out unscathed.
Good. So, these students have this in their mind that, even if you have a startup, you should actually be going ahead with a startup directly instead of, having some experience before. So, what do you think? Like, after their 4th year, a student should go ahead with a startup or take a job first and then you can think about it?
Yeah, it's a hard question to answer because I have personally never worked in a startup. Although I would argue, and my previous boss would argue as well, that we worked in kind of a startup environment because everything had a very tight deadline. We had to get to customers really quickly. So these two work environments are very different in nature. And honestly, it's very hard to understand as a student, at least it was for me, is what is the right fit, what really interests me. I knew that technology interests me. I didn't know what kind of environment it would be between enterprise and startup. So I think it's something that people just need to try. Just try once. How does it feel? Do you really like it? If it likes it, maybe that's your calling. If it is not, maybe you want a more relaxed environment where everything is more structured. There are more structures in place across the organization, the company, the HR department, sales, marketing, and engineering, and you have a set of processes and workflows. Great, go for that. Because irrespective of whichever environment you work in, you learn a lot. If you work in a startup, there is no structure. There are no processes.
Right.
You are the one who will build those processes. You are the one who will influence future engineering teams for the next 5 to 10 years on what the process needs to be, right? Obviously the iteration could be much faster. It could be a couple of years. But in case of a well-established company, you learn from the processes put in place because processes are created to build better software at a much higher scale, at a much higher speed. So how do these processes impact the software and the development? You learn a lot of that, because as you grow more into the leadership position, you are expected to build and bring these processes into life. If you have worked in an established company and you understand how these processes work, you can retrofit them or tweak them according to the team that you are working in. Right. So I think there are lessons to be learned in either of the places, and at some point people just need to try it and see how it feels.
This last time, like, any word of advice you would give to not only these students but anyone who is thinking of going ahead with software engineer, and this is something you should focus more on to get into. So any kind of words of advice you?
So word of advice from me would be curious and don't let your curiosity die, because as you grow in your career, you will be coding much less. There will not be a lot of time for you in your hand to actually start coding, start discovering things. But being curious doesn't always mean trying things out on your own by just writing code. It could be about reading. It could be about understanding other people's experiences. That's why there are vlogs, there are videos about technology, there are podcasts, there are blog posts. So keep reading about them, keep listening to them, keep watching them, and quench your thirst for curiosity. If you remain curious, it's easy going, and you will keep learning over and over again. So I think my one and only advice will be just be curious.
Be curious. Be curious. Good. Thank you so much, sir. It was a great session, and got to learn so many things from you, sir. Thank you so much. It was really nice having you here. Thank you so much.